Hello, my friends. Welcome back. Before I tell you anything else, I need you to promise me one thing. Don't leave in the next 60 seconds. Because what I'm about to show you is something Honda tried to bury and almost got away with it. Take a slow breath. Settle in. The engine of this story is about to turn over. Somewhere in this story, there's a year where an entire factory line goes completely silent. Remember that. We'll come back to it. Picture a locked room in a Japanese factory. The year is 1972. No windows. No visitors. Security guards at the door of a room where nothing should need guarding. Inside, a handful of engineers are hunched over a machine that doesn't exist anywhere else on Earth. They've given it a code name, and the code name alone should tell you how seriously they're taking this. They call it King of Kings. They don't know if it will work. They don't know what it will become. And they have absolutely no idea that strangers on the other side of the planet will one day look at this same machine and call it a couch on wheels. So which is it? A king or a couch? Stay with me. Both names are about to make perfect sense. This is the story of a secret project that was almost abandoned twice, nearly killed by its own ambition, saved by accident, and somehow became the motorcycle that redefined touring forever. This is the story of the Honda Goldwing. And the strangest part? Honda never actually planned to build this bike. Not this version of it. What they were building first was something else entirely, and it almost never made it out of that room. The year is 1972. Honda has just detonated a bomb in the motorcycle world with the CB750, a bike so far ahead of its time that every rival manufacturer is forced back to the drawing board overnight. But Honda's leadership isn't satisfied. They want a flagship, a machine so dominant that competitors won't even know where to start copying it. The man handed this near-impossible assignment is Shoichiro Irimajiri, an engineer who'd already built some of Honda's most ferocious racing engines. Every rival is watching Honda's next move with one eye open. And behind that locked door, the pressure to deliver something unforgettable is suffocating. His first attempt, codenamed M1, is a monster. A 1,470 cubic centimeters flat-six engine, liquid-cooled, more complicated than anything Honda had ever dared put on a public road. It is brilliant on paper. It is, in practice, nearly impossible to build. So the team does something painful. They tear it apart and start over. Smaller, simpler, a flat 999 cubic centimeters, liquid-cooled engine, still radical, but buildable. The mission, as Honda saw it, was simple: build the fastest, most powerful sport bike on the planet. But something was about to happen that nobody in that locked room had planned for. Something the engineers never asked for, never designed for, and, at first, didn't even understand. What do you think happens when you hand a rider the most powerful machine Honda has ever built for the street, and then just walk away and watch? You're not going to believe what they did with it. American riders didn't race it. They loaded it with luggage, bolted on windshields nobody asked them to add, pointed it down highways and rode for hundreds, then thousands of miles at a stretch, turning Honda's sport bike into something the engineers in that locked room never designed it to be. A long-distance machine. And Honda, quietly, carefully, was watching every single move. In October 1974, at the Cologne Motorcycle Show in Germany, the world finally laid eyes on it, the GL 1000. By early 1975, it was sitting in American showrooms. In its very first year, more than 13,000 units sold in the United States alone. The press called it Honda's first real assault on the big bike market. They had no idea how right they were, because Honda had been listening to what riders were telling them without saying a word, and one by one, this strange flagship was about to start collecting things no touring rider had ever been handed before. And once Honda started listening, they didn't stop for the next 50 years. Here's everything they gave riders next, and one of these firsts wouldn't show up on any motorcycle, anywhere, for another 3 decades. It was the first liquid-cooled engine Honda had ever put into a production motorcycle. It ran on a shaft, not a chain, so riders never had to think about it again. It carried a fairing built to cut through wind, not just decorate the bike. Later, it carried cruise control, then a reverse gear, because a machine this heavy genuinely needed one. And then, in 2006, wait for this one, it became the first motorcycle anywhere in the world to carry an airbag. Every generation added something. Every generation widened the gap between the gold wing and everything else on two wheels. But more isn't the same as better, and Honda was about to learn that the hard way, not once, but twice. One of those lessons would cost them money. The other would cost them an entire market. In 1980, the GL 1100 arrived with factory fairings and hard luggage built directly into the design. The Interstate and Aspencade trims, built for riders who wanted to vanish over the horizon for a week at a time. By 1984, the GL 1200 pushed further still, eventually offering fuel injection on the SEI model, a technology most of the motorcycle world hadn't even attempted yet. Then, in 1988, Honda did something almost unthinkable. They ripped out the flat 4 and replaced it with a flat 6. The GL 1500 arrived with cruise control, a true reverse gear, and linked brakes. Comforts borrowed straight from luxury cars, somehow built into a machine you steered with your entire body weight. By 2001, the GL 1800 opened a new era altogether. An aluminum frame, anti-lock brakes, and a chassis sharp enough to make a 900-pound motorcycle feel almost light through a corner. It looked, from the outside, like nothing could touch this bike. It could, and it almost happened twice, quietly, in ways most riders never even heard about at the time. In 1979, Honda discovered something they didn't want to find. The aluminum-spoked wheels on the early bikes were cracking. A full recall followed, and Honda replaced them with stronger steel-spoked wheels. In 1986, the engineers tried something bold, fuel injection, years ahead of most production motorcycles. It worked beautifully. It also cost too much to build. A year later, Honda quietly went back to carburetors. The technology simply wasn't ready to be affordable, not yet. And around the same time, something else was slipping away with almost no one noticing. Honda's bare, unfaired standard gold wing, the stripped-down original, was quietly losing favor in Europe. Riders there wanted the fully dressed Interstate and Aspencade. Eventually, Honda pulled the standard model from that market entirely. Small cracks, each one patched, each one survivable. But the next crack wasn't in a wheel, or an engine, or a market. It was somewhere far more personal, and for a lot of longtime owners, it felt like losing a member of the family. Then came 2010, and for many riders, what happened next felt like a kind of heartbreak. For 30 straight years, the Gold Wing had been built in Marysville, Ohio, an American machine, assembled by American hands, for American roads. In 1991, the plant's 500,000th motorcycle off the line was a Gold Wing. In 1996, so was its 1 millionth. But in 2010, Honda made a decision nobody saw coming. They stopped building it in the United States. There was number 2011 model year at all. The line sat completely silent for an entire year, while production moved permanently to Kumamoto, Japan. Remember that silent year I told you to hold on to at the very beginning? This is it. This is the gap. Assembly workers who had spent decades bolting these machines together watched their own line go quiet. Dealers fielded phone calls from longtime owners, almost desperate to know if the bike they loved would still be the same machine once it came from somewhere else. For riders who had treated this bike almost like family, the move felt personal. Some never forgave it. And as if that wound wasn't enough, there was still that nickname following the bike everywhere it went. The one some riders said with affection and others said as a straight-up insult. The couch on wheels. Heavy, plush, built for comfort, not speed. A joke that had followed the Gold Wing for decades. Honda heard every single one of those jokes. And in 2018, they finally did something about it. Something that would make the couch on wheels nickname feel almost laughable to say out loud. In 2018, engineers tore the Goldwing down to nothing and rebuilt it from the ground up. They stripped out over 40 kilograms of dead weight. They redesigned the front suspension entirely. They added a dual-clutch automatic transmission and wired the whole machine for Apple CarPlay before most cars even had it. The couch learned to move like it meant it. And even after all of that, 50 years, 6 generations, 1 international relocation, and a complete identity overhaul, the road still wasn't finished testing this bike. Not even close. Not even now. Even 50 years in, the road hasn't gone quiet. In October 2024, Honda recalled over 18,000 gold wings after discovering a bolt inside the engine that could fail, risking a locked rear wheel at speed. Honda repaired every single one, free of charge. And then, in 2025, against every joke, every recall, every relocation, the Goldwing turned 50 years old. Honda marked the milestone at Daytona Bike Week, the very same kind of gathering where, decades earlier, skeptical riders had first laughed at the idea of a 6-cylinder sofa with handlebars. It remains the best-selling touring motorcycle ever built. More than 640,000 units sold worldwide. Riders have pushed individual bikes past 180,000 miles without a major breakdown. No other touring motorcycle, before or since, has come anywhere close. Here's what's worth sitting with. The Goldwing was never built to become what it became. It was supposed to be a sport bike. It became a tourer because the people riding it told Honda, without saying a single word, what they actually needed. And Honda was humble enough to listen. Maybe that's true of you too, my friend. Maybe the road you're on right now didn't look anything like this when you started. Maybe you set out for one destination and ended up building something else entirely. A different bike, a different ride, a different life. That's not failure. That's the exact same quiet redesign the Goldwing has gone through, generation after generation, for 50 straight years. Some people will call what you're building a couch on wheels. Let them. 50 years from now, you'll still be on the road. Most of them won't even remember saying it. They'll have already moved on to mocking somebody else's slow start, while you're still the one turning the throttle, still adding the next part, still becoming the next generation of whatever you set out to build. Keep writing. Keep building. Keep listening to the road. If this story stayed with you, tell me which part hit hardest. Was it the secret project once codenamed King of Kings? The year the line went completely silent before production moved to Japan? Or the year Honda finally answered every couch on wheels joke by changing everything? There are more stories exactly like this one waiting right here. Subscribe if you want to ride along for the next one. Until then, keep the throttle steady and never stop the journey.